Hey, Jack.
Hello. I'm I started the recording right now and I got some questions up. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For the audience, tell us who you are, your occupation, and how you got into the field you're in.
Okay. Nice to meet everybody out there, although virtually. My name is Shawn Jensen. I'm a audit partner at Moss Adams, which is a public accounting and advisory firm. Um, I've been with Moss Adams for 25 years. I probably straight out of college and kind of worked there and many different industry groups, and then kind of picked one and went with it. So.
Okay. Um, so with with the pandemic, how did it affect the operations and business strategies of your clients?
Yeah, sure. So we probably talked before. I work predominantly in the food and beverage industry, which includes some wine, beer, and spirits as well. With the pandemic, uh, winners and losers in the game of the pan, right? If you were a food company that mainly sold through grocery or clubs, you won. If you were a food company that sold food service into restaurants, you lost, right? Some companies were able to pivot faster than others, which, being nimble, and usually smaller companies are a little bit more nimble. They get a little bit more creative and more risks as well. And I'd say smaller companies were able to pivot. If you had a good entrepreneur, you probably pivoted quickly, right?
Yeah. Did you see like a great shift to online selling?
Yeah, that was, I think, a trend that had started that has subsided a little bit, but it's not going away, and I think that will continue. I don't think that was a fad. That's not going to go up and down. That will continue to climb. Um, Certainly here in the U.S., we find most people are starting to pay a little bit more for convenience. Even and noticing that even in what I this economic environment, and again, there's winners and losers as economic environment changes. Um, but I really don't see the convenience factor going away. That's a trend that's here to stay.
Okay. Um, so you kind of already answered this. But I'm just gonna expand it to like, how are the interest rates affecting the businesses, or is it like affecting it like significantly at all?
It really depends on how leveraged these businesses are. Uh, Borrowing based on working capital and you're heavy into, let's say a working line of credit, we call that asset-based lending, which the bank is lending based on your inventory value and the value of your AR. Those are predominantly a variable interest rate on the line of credit, and it fluctuates. Uh, if you're heavily dependent on a line of credit, that's working into your gross margin significantly. Although I will also say companies have been able to pass that increased expense along for the most part over the last few years. That's starting to subside right now. I think from on the grocery side, grocery starting to push back on price increase 2 years. Companies were taking anywhere from 1 to 3 price increases a year, which was really not a thing prior to um, economic environment. It was a pretty steep inflationary period. Um, And so everything was being able to pass down to the consumer.
Okay. So it cut out a little bit.
Yeah,
So you were talking about so you said inflation's kind of subsiding and
yeah,
in way.
I think inflation, it's not going away right now. It will slow, but I think is what we've yet to experience is the wage inflation. So you had a commodity inflation, and then you had some other outside circumstances around the logistics that really accelerated uh, environment. That lasted for a longer than it normally would. And when that lasts longer, that puts pressure on wages for wages to come up. And as wages come up, that's the inflationary pressure going up again. Now, as commodities start to subside a little bit, the prices will come down, but wages don't fluctuate, especially if you're talking oil and gas. And that's really because everything is delivered usually via, right? It's coming here from a foreign country on a ship. If it's accelerated, it's getting flown. If not, it's getting driven somewhere to the as those prices fluctuate and thus comes down. Wages don't fluctuate. Nobody shows up one day to work and says, "Oh, the economy inflation's down. I'll take a wage decrease." That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I think through 2024, I think most will feel the full impact of the wage inflation. And if you're labor dependent, that's impact on your product and impact on your margin. That's going to one of two things is going to happen, or a little bit of both. You're going to increase your prices, or you're going to shrink your margin. I think we'll see what happens during 2024. But if the wage continues to go up through 2024, I think you're going to see more inflationary on commodities because it's labor driven on how it's getting here.
Okay. Um. Uh. So how do like small and medium-sized business in the consumer and food and beverage industry, how do they grow when the industry is so competitive and there's so many established competitors and whatnot?
That's that's a that's a that's the $1 million question, right? If ever the answer to that, we wouldn't be doing this right now. But in the general sense, small companies, the mid-sized companies, they live and die based on the leadership, entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Good idea and a good entrepreneur, um, people are willing to invest in you. I think as interest rates continue to maintain at a higher level, you know, people willing to invest in a higher risk situation, money's a little bit harder to come by in those regards, right? When I can uh, go buy essentially a risk-free bill from the treasury, and call it 4 or 5%, you know, why would I risk 10 or 15%, right?
Yeah.
The risk doesn't outweigh. Now, if I'm getting 0.1% return uh, on my cash, well, then I'm more willing to take a 15 to 20% risk, right? And so you'll see more money come to entrepreneurs as interest rates come down. Right now, I think if you have a great product and a great team, and it is what I mean by scalable, is it can't be a bubble product. It needs to be something that's going to hit mainstream.
What's a bubble product?
So product, everybody will be somewhat familiar uh, with this there's a lot of buzz about plant-based proteins and alternatives to meat, right?
Yeah.
That is, to me, that is a bubble product. That's not wide to everybody, right? That's not um, vegetables. It's not like other meats and 80% of the population is consuming. This is a very small percentage of the population consumes it. Well, that means it's not easy to scale, right? It's easier to scale if 80% of the population is willing to buy it, is a potential consumer of it, versus 5 or 10% of the population, right?
Yeah.
And when I talk about those bubble projects, actually Northern California, Boulder, Colorado, sometimes a little bit in Southern California, um, those are interesting. I would call those incubators for these, a little bit um, emerging brands and emerging products. That doesn't states. Those are little bubble areas that consume these new and innovative products.
So speaking about that, how much do like businesses like how much is like the area the business is started? How much does that like affect the product that they sell? Because you talked about bubble products and how they're doing like good in those little areas.
Mhm. Say that one more time.
So you're talking about like bubble products and
Yeah.
how they're there's just little areas like you said, Los Angeles, Boulder, where they're all popular. How
Mhm.
so how does the area where business is founded like
Where does
I'm
that
sorry, I'm
mean?
not
How does that
articulating
help
this
them? Yeah,
well.
it's kind of the location of where the business exists. How does that impact,
The
what they do?
product they sell.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Boulder, Colorado is really an incubator. There's a large community there of, I'll call this as more of the health and wellness and natural organic product. Um, and so there's a lot of support. There's a lot of community that support those types of innovations. And there's certain, I'll call them funds or private equity funds that are willing to invest in those types of businesses. I think those are some pretty good incubator, and even, that's even for the Bay Area. I'd call that kind of a bubble as well, where I think the consumers in those locations are more willing to try these new, better for you, unique products, right? So the closer you are to your market, the easier it is to test it out, right? We run into a number and sell, maybe they grow to 5, $10 million, but they're selling to Northern California, and maybe they start to sell into Southern California, slows down a little bit, maybe they reach revenue, but it's a product that's going to scale throughout the US. And so these are the types of bubble product, and where they're developed and where they're consumed is all in a local place, right? It's kind of confined.
So how can a company innovate so they're not like a bubble product, but they can go international with
Yeah.
like a competitive product?
Yeah, one that may see people out, a lot of people may be seeing out there is a company called, it's a better for you soda. So it's going to take the place of your Coke or Pepsi, right?
Sorry, you cut out. What's the name of the product?
It's called Olipop, and
Okay.
it's right. It's a new better for you soda. When you think of that, that is a better for you product. But when you're going after a consumer drinks soda pop, that's a large population and a large demographic that covers the United States completely, right? Where when you start plant-based products, those are bubbles in the US. people are you at, right? Where they consume.
Okay. So it's more about like finding an industry that's big and just making like a little tweak or just a little thing that kind of like gives you an edge over the competitors.
Yeah, well, I do think it needs to be disruptive enough, but if there's a large subsector of an industry like the soda pop industry, if you can disrupt such a large piece of the pie, um, there's a lot to be made there, right? There's a lot of gains to be had there. But if you're starting with a very small demographic, even if you can dominate that demographic, it's still questionable whether you'd be successful or not.
Okay. Uh, so so what are like the traits that you find in successful businesses? And like on the opposite side of things, what are the traits that you find in unsuccessful businesses?
Yeah, yeah. So this is yeah, a relatively easy question for me is it's really revolves around entrepreneur, right? Um, and what makes a good entrepreneur attracts investment um, and attracts a team that can grow a business and a product and develop. And it's the opposite of those traits that usually companies they don't have these traits and therefore they're not successful. But when I think of about a successful entrepreneur, they're usually pretty visionary, right? They have a clear vision of what they would like to achieve, and they can communicate that vision to others, right? So they can rally a team. Most of these entrepreneurs, they're passionate about whatever it is they're doing. They usually have a lot of passion and a lot of drive. They tend to take risks, right? They're willing to spend their own money. They're willing to mortgage their house. They're willing to forego other things in life to build a product. And they're also usually resilient. There's no company that I've ever run into that's ever had just way.
Oh, wait, you cut off. What did you say? There's no company that you've ever seen that ever.
Yeah, I've never company have a completely smooth path. Right? There's always bumps and hurdles along the way. And most entrepreneurs, they're resilient. When something pops up, it doesn't totally devastate them. They're able to to rebound quickly on their failures. It doesn't stop them. They're usually adaptable. Something happens, whether it's interest rates, whether it's commodity prices, it's logistical problems, they're quick to adapt, right? They're innovative. They use technology to their advantage, whether that's AI or whether that's other technologies that help them in their business. The other thing that I'd also say is they're usually hardworking. Not a job to them, it's their life, right? They really dive in and they're just super passionate about it. And so those are the things that I see in successful businesses. And usually the businesses that aren't so successful, they're missing one or two of these attributes.
Okay. Uh, so so let's say so how do like entrepreneurs, let's say they don't have any money, where would they where would they begin?
Yeah, that's a bootstrapped. And this is where that passion and the idea comes in. If you have a great idea and you can commit that idea and you have the passion and the hard work, you can always find money. Attracting investors. Sometimes it's not the product, individual, right? It's really um, you're investing in an early entrepreneur. So when you don't have a track record, it really has to be your vision and how can you articulate that vision to somebody with the capital that can help you out, right?
Yeah. Uh, let's see if there's any more questions. What's like what would you say is the biggest like you talked about like the entrepreneur, right? But like what's something that's more of like some like tangible aspect in a business which makes it unsuccessful or successful? Like it'd be like financial wise or
Yeah. Uh, yes, for sure. You do have to manage your balance sheet. You have to manage cash burn. And you have to be able to forecast, right? Um, the thing is everybody budgets. The unequivocally, you will not hit this budget. You're either going to exceed it or you're going to miss it, right? You never actually hit on target on budget, right? Consistently, quarter after quarter, year after year. And managing your balance, the expectation of your investors, right? When I'm talking about managing your balance sheet, it's about managing your inventory. How much do I spend? Do I turn my inventory over? Can I carry larger amounts, reduce my cost of the inventory buy from a quantity standpoint, right? There's a constant balance that through the balance sheet and cash flow. Most statement, I never look at an income statement. The statement that I look at is the cash flow statement. That tells me everything about the business and how they're running the business.
could you give like an example of how like the cash flow and like where all the cash is going, how you could get like a concrete like idea of how the business is operating?
Yeah, sure. I've seen companies that they're growing well in sales, right?
Yeah.
But if they're not managing the cash flow, they run out of cash. And then all of a sudden you can't pay your vendors. You can't pay your employees, right? Why? Well, because you got a bunch of AR, accounts receivable, and inventory on the books that takes you another 30, 60, or 90 days to turn into cash. And so stop selling to you. You're you don't pay them.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have a great idea and have great growth. But if you don't manage the cash flow, you'll bankrupt the business, even though it was a great idea.
Okay. Uh, is there any other statements you want to say?
Uh, yeah, I think for the kids in high school and I'll even call them young adults, uh, the more you about business and finance, the better off you'll be not only in your next career or where you go, but it'll also resonate into your personal lives as well, right? I think that's one thing I think high school kids are missing these days is the teaching of finance, right? Whether it's personal finance or business finance, it's really one of the same. It's about managing your balance sheet, managing your debt load. Can you service your debt? What are you buying with your debt, right? There's a lot of different things that I think younger folks, if they learn about that early on, they'll be much better off in life throughout. I think every kid should take an accounting class, right? Accounting really is the language of business. And once you understand, you'll understand the balance sheet, you'll understand the income statement, and more importantly, you'll understand the cash flow statement. But it's really taking it and really that really is of business. And you need to learn the language before you speak it.
Okay. Why do you think accounting and all that is not taught that much in high schools?
I, you know, I'm not too sure exactly why. I look at a pretty good skill set, but those. those who dictate the curriculum, that's probably a better question for them.
Yeah.
You know, I really think we do kind of a disservice to our young entrepreneurs without teaching them, right? These young entrepreneurs have to rely on outside the school system to gain their experience, to gain their knowledge, um, and to gain their skill set, right? Where if if you taught this in high school, like I said, whether you're going to be a business person or not, whether you're going to end up in finance or accounting or you don't, doesn't matter. Once you understand finance and accounting, you're going to be better off in your personal life as well. You'll be able to manage your personal balance sheet, right? Your personal income statement. And it's how much revenue is coming in, spending. Right now, I don't think we enough time teaching our young kids on how that actually works.
Yeah.
I feel my kids, they get enough of it at home.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. And it's really it's really beneficial for the audience who are going to be watching this, who are in high school and all that.
Yeah, well, good luck to you guys. I appreciate the invitation, and guys, find anything that you want to talk to anybody about. I'm happy to lend an ear or give you some thoughts.
Yeah.